May Day is a national public holiday paying tribute to the historic struggles and gains made by workers and the labor movements. Joining us on the line is Dr. Marius Kudumo, political analyst and former trade unionist. Good afternoon, sir, and welcome to the news. Good afternoon. Can you hear me? I'll go ahead and ask the first question. I can't seem to hear you, but nevertheless, what is the significance of this day in the context of Namibia?
It is significant because it gives an opportunity to the workers and the working class to reflect on their unity, their solidarity, and also to talk about their struggles for decent working and living conditions and for social justice. In the case of Namibia, all these issues were denied, especially the African workers. By law, workers were not allowed to belong to trade unions. It's only in the late 80s that workers were allowed. So independence brought about rights and obligations for workers. That's why this day is important in the context for Namibia to reflect on the struggles of the workers in the past and the struggles of the workers and the working class in the future.
Now, Dr. Kudumo, for a very long time, the day was marked with a lot of vim and vigor. Now, over the years, we've seen the numbers at national organized events dwindling. What is the reason behind the lack of enthusiasm towards the day nowadays?
I think one of the reasons is trade unions, especially the leaders of trade unions in the context of Namibia, have actually not defined their roles post-independence. In other words, they have not clearly defined how they relate to the state, to the government, and to the other non-state actors. There was an assumption that things will just come about as a result of independence. In other words, they have not clearly defined the strategies and the actions that they will undertake in the new dispensation, as well as development of leaders who can lead the trade unions. When I talk about definition of roles, I'm actually talking about, do the leaders of the trade unions understand that they belong to a class which is a working class with its own interest as well as its own struggles? I think because of that lack of definition of roles, we are seeing that the workers themselves are not having a lot of trust in trade unions as well as in the leaders of trade unions. We cannot generalize, but in many of the trade unions, this is the case.
Yes. Now, as you know, this year's theme is COVID-19 related. How do you see the future of work post or after COVID-19? And do you think it is the time to put things into perspective?
Yeah, it is critical because the COVID-19, despite its implications, its effects on the livelihood of people, it gives us an opportunity to think and to reflect on our institutions as well as our methods of work. We must remember that before COVID-19, the International Labour Organization have commissioned a study that was started, Global Commission on the Future of Work. In that study, which was released in 2019, there was already an indication that the way how we work, the nature of work, it's going to change fundamentally as a result of various factors, including the technologies. So COVID-19 is just confirming that the way how we work, the nature of work is actually going to change. And therefore, it demands that we have to relook into how we work. What is work actually? what is the future of work, our institutions fit
Yes.
for the future of work.
Just briefly and very lastly, lately unions have been criticized for having more bark than bite in relation to addressing the plight of working class. Do you agree with this sentiment? How can unions evolve into keeping up with times in order to remain relevant? Just very briefly before we close off.
Yeah, there's a merit in that because the COVID-19 that we're talking about, we have not seen unions coming out and giving policy directions, policy proposals to government on how this situation has affected the working class, what are actually the programs and suggestions that they are proposing.
Yes.
So they talk more. Look, the context that I'm talking about is it is now about influencing public policies. And therefore you need skills, you need leadership who understand this for you to play a critical role. And we have not seen. I'm also again saying we cannot generalize, but
Yes.
overall, the unions are not playing the role that a union is supposed to be playing in influencing public policies.
Dr. Kudumo, thank you so much for sharing your views on this.
Thank you very much.
And that was Dr. Marius Kudumo, political analyst and former trade unionist, talking to us.